Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be tackling a pretty big question.
Yeah, a really, really big one.
That's right, one that kind of bends your mind a little bit and maybe keeps you up at night.
Definitely one to ponder late at night, for sure.
Okay, so the question is, what if everything that we experience is all just a simulation?
That's right. We're diving into simulation theory today.
Simulation theory. So, I have to admit, I love this topic. I find it fascinating.
It's a popular one for sure. It captures the imagination.
It really does. It's like Slate out of the Matrix, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
that idea that what we perceive as real might actually be a construct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So where does this idea even come from? Like, what are the origins of simulation theory?
Well, it's got a long history going back centuries even.
Really?
Yeah, with philosophers pondering the nature of reality and all that. But in its modern form, the theory we're talking about today, a lot of it can be traced back to a philosopher named Nick Bostrom. He's at Oxford University, and he proposed something called the simulation argument.
Okay.
And it basically boils down to a trilemma.
A trilemma. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, so Bostrom argues that one of three scenarios must be true when it comes to civilizations like ours.
Okay.
First, civilizations like ours might just tend to go extinct
Okay.
before they reach the level of technology where they could create these really, really convincing simulations that we're talking about.
Okay, so they just never get there.
They never get there exactly, or second civilizations might reach that level of technology,
Okay.
but they choose not to create simulations.
Interesting.
For whatever reason, ethical concerns, just not interested, who knows?
Okay.
And the third possibility, and this is the one that really gets people excited,
Yeah.
is that we are actually living in a simulation created by a more advanced civilization.
Okay, so essentially we're either living in a simulation, we're doomed, or we're totally unique in our lack of interest in creating simulated worlds.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary.
It's a lot to take in, but I'm with you so far.
It's definitely a lot to consider, but that's the core of Bostrom's argument.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the evidence, or at least the arguments that make people think that we might be living in a simulation.
Right, exactly.
And one that I always find fascinating is the glitch argument.
Right.
It's kind of playing off the idea of glitches in the Matrix.
Precisely.
But tell me about that.
Well, it stems from things like the Mandela effect,
Okay.
which you've probably heard of, where large groups of people share a memory of an event that never actually happened.
Oh, yeah, like the classic example of the Berenstain Bears. So many people remember it as Berenstein.
Right, exactly, even though that's not the way it's spelled. Or people who swear Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 80s.
Yeah, I remember that.
When in reality, he lived until 2013.
Right. So it's these weird collective false memories.
Exactly. And proponents of simulation theory suggest that these could be interpreted as glitches in the simulation.
Like bugs in a computer program.
Exactly like our collective memory is a corrupted file or something.
It's a little unsettling, but I can see how it fits in.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit creepy to think about.
So we've got these potential glitches, and then there's another big one that always comes up. The Fermi paradox.
Ah, yes, the Fermi paradox.
So remind us what that is again?
So it's this apparent contradiction between the vastness of the universe
Yeah.
and the lack of any confirmed contact with alien civilizations.
It's like if the universe is teeming with life, like many scientists believe, where is everybody?
Right, exactly. Why haven't we encountered any other intelligent beings yet?
It's a good question.
And simulation theory offers one possible explanation. Maybe our simulated universe is designed to focus solely on human development.
Okay, so like in a video game where they haven't programmed any characters outside of the player's immediate surroundings to save on processing power.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. It's like conserving computational resources, focusing on only what's necessary for our experience.
Okay, so this is starting to make my head spin a little bit. We've got these potential glitches, the eerie silence of the universe. What other evidence points toward a simulated reality?
Well, some proponents point to the very nature of reality itself.
Oh.
They argue that the laws of physics, the constants of nature, the mathematical patterns that we see everywhere from galaxies to seashells, all of these things could be evidence of a programmed universe.
Whoa, so you're saying that the fundamental laws of physics could just be lines of code written by some super advanced programmer.
That's a radical notion, but it's one that some people find compelling.
Yeah, it's definitely radical. So instead of a universe governed by randomness and chaos, it's more like we're in a carefully crafted virtual reality.
Exactly. And some even go as far as to suggest that consciousness itself could be part of the simulation.
Whoa, okay, now we're venturing into some really mind-bending territory. Hold on, a simulated universe, simulated laws of physics, and potentially even simulated consciousness.
That's the essence of what simulation theory proposes. And believe it or not, there are even more intriguing pieces of the puzzle to consider,
Okay.
especially when we delve into the realm of quantum physics.
All right, bring on the quantum weirdness.
That's what we'll explore next.
Okay, so quantum physics is where things get really, really weird.
Yeah, it's where the rule book of reality seems to go out the window.
It's like a whole different set of rules down there.
Exactly, and that's why some proponents of simulation theory find it so compelling.
So how does quantum physics tie into the idea that we might be living in a simulation?
Well, it provides some of the most perplexing and counterintuitive observations about the nature of reality.
I have to admit, quantum physics has always been a bit of a mystery to me.
It's definitely mind-boggling for sure.
Yeah, it's like all logic breaks down.
Right. And one of the most famous experiments in quantum physics that really illustrates this is the double slit experiment.
Okay, I vaguely remember that from like high school physics class.
Yeah, it's the one with the light shining through two slits.
Yeah, and then it creates an interference pattern like waves overlapping.
Exactly. But the strange thing is when you try to observe which slit each particle goes through,
Yeah.
they suddenly behave like particles again.
Right, like they're changing their behavior based on whether or not they're being observed.
Exactly. That's the observer effect.
So it's like the particles know when they're being watched.
It's bizarre, right?
It's really strange. So what does that mean?
Well, some people interpret this as evidence that reality isn't fixed or objective, but rather something that's rendered on demand based on the observer's perspective.
Okay, so you're saying that reality might be like a video game where only the parts the player is looking at are fully rendered.
That's a helpful analogy, although it's a simplification, of course.
Sure, but the idea that our observation could influence reality is pretty wild.
It is, and it gets even weirder.
Oh no.
There are variations of the double slit experiment, like the delayed choice experiment,
Right.
which suggests that particles might even know in advance whether they'll be observed or not.
So they're anticipating the future. That's like something out of a science fiction movie.
It is, and it raises questions about the nature of time and causality.
Yeah, like maybe our linear perception of time is an illusion.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the glitches, the Fermi paradox, this quantum weirdness. It's painting a pretty compelling picture of a reality that might be far different from what we perceive.
Right, and while simulation theory is still just a hypothesis, it definitely raises some fascinating questions.
So let's say, for argument's sake, that we are living in a simulation. Who created it and why?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and unfortunately we don't have any definitive answers.
But we can speculate, right?
Of course, one possibility is that our simulation was created by a future version of humanity.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe as a way to study their past or to explore different historical trajectories.
So like a giant historical reenactment, but with real consciousness.
Yeah, something like that.
That's a really cool idea.
Another possibility is that it was created by a super advanced alien civilization. Maybe for entertainment research or reasons we can't even comprehend.
It's kind of humbling to think that we might be part of some cosmic science experiment.
It definitely puts things in perspective.
And there's the possibility that we're not the only simulation, right?
Right, there could be multiple simulations running simultaneously.
Like a multiverse of simulation.
Exactly, each with its own set of parameters and physical laws.
Okay, now that's blowing my mind.
And it raises the question of whether there might be a hierarchy of simulations,
Okay.
with some nested within others, like a Russian nesting doll of realities.
This is getting very sci-fi now.
It is, but it's fun to think about.
It really is, and it makes you appreciate the mystery and complexity of the universe.
Absolutely.
But wait, we haven't even talked about the biggest implication of all. If we are living in a simulation, does it diminish the meaning of our lives? Are we just puppets in some cosmic play?
That's the question that gets to the heart of what it means to be human, and that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
So we've been talking about simulation theory and all the mind-bending possibilities, but I think it's time to address the big question.
Yeah, the one that's probably on everyone's mind.
If it turns out that our whole reality, everything we experience, is just a sophisticated computer program,
Right.
Does that mean our lives are meaningless?
That's a heavy question.
It is. It really is. It's like if we're just lines of code in a giant computer program, does that strip away our free will, our purpose?
Well, I think it's important to remember that even if we are living in a simulation,
Okay.
our experiences, our emotions, our relationships,
Hmm.
our struggles, our triumphs, they're all very real to us.
So even if the stage is fake, the play is still real.
Exactly. The actors are still pouring their hearts and souls into their performances.
That's a good way to put it. But what about the bigger picture? I mean, some people might feel a sense of existential dread,
Mm.
you know, like nihilism, if they believe that they're just code in a computer program.
That's understandable, but consider this. Even if we are living in a simulation, it doesn't diminish the inherent wonder and mystery of existence.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about it. If there's a civilization out there advanced enough to create a universe as complex and detailed as our own,
Hmm.
that in itself is incredible. It suggests a level of intelligence and creativity that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost a spiritual question then, isn't it? Like, who are these creators? What are their motivations?
Exactly. It pushes us to think beyond our limited human perspective and consider the possibility of something far grander than we can currently comprehend.
So instead of leading to nihilism, it could actually spark a sense of wonder and a desire to explore these bigger questions.
Exactly. It could inspire us to push the boundaries of our own knowledge and creativity.
That's a much more optimistic outlook than I was expecting.
Yeah.
But let's talk practicalities for a second.
Mm.
If we were to definitively discover that we're living in a simulation, how will that change our approach to life?
That's a tough one to answer. It would definitely be a paradigm shift in how we understand ourselves and the world around us.
Right? All our assumptions about reality, the limits of our perception, the meaning of life, all of that would be up for grabs.
It might lead us to reevaluate our values and priorities, too.
Okay, how so?
Well, if we knew for sure that our lives were part of a larger simulation, we might focus more on experiences, relationships, and personal growth,
Yeah,
rather than material possessions or worldly achievements.
that makes sense because if it's all a simulation, maybe the most important thing is to play the game well,
Yeah.
to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling.
That's a great way to put it. Ultimately, whether we're in a simulation or not, the journey is what matters.
I love that. The journey is what matters.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we should cherish every moment, embrace the unknown, and never stop exploring.
Absolutely.
Exploring the mysteries of the universe both within and outside of ourselves.
Well said. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be the ones creating simulations.
Wow.
Exploring the infinite possibilities of virtual realities and facing the same philosophical and ethical questions that we're discussing today.
That's a thought-provoking idea. So if you could create a perfect simulation, a world without suffering, a world where everyone was happy and fulfilled, would you do it?
That's a tough one.
It is. And if you did, what would that say about our own existence?
Those are questions for each of us to ponder.
Definitely some food for thought. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into simulation theory.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. We hope you've enjoyed it and maybe come away with more questions than answers and a renewed sense of wonder about the universe.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for listening, everyone.